Good morning, folks. Al Mattingly, Daviess County Judge Executive here today. And today I'm not going to speak about COVID-19, although I would tell you that my good friend, Secretary of Transportation, Jim Gray, would love it if I would just say a word of encouragement. You need to get out there and get your shot. The more people that get vaccinated, the sooner that we can open this community back up. But he's not with us. And he sent instead Sarah Jackson from the Kentucky Transportation Department. And Sarah was very instrumental when we were working to open our regional Real ID office here in Daviess County. Sarah and I had several conversations back and forth, her representing the Secretary of Transportation and me representing the people of Daviess County. So Sarah, welcome. And I'm going to take my mask off. I just do that to show people how important it is to continue to wear their masks. So Sarah, welcome. Nice to have you.
Thank you so much for having me, Judge.
Sure. Tell me a little bit about your job there at the Transportation Cabinet. What do you do? And you know, how is, here, I'm going to set you up. How is Secretary Gray to work for?
He is absolutely inspiring, as you could imagine. He has more hands in more projects than I can imagine, and that any boss I've ever worked for. I've learned a lot for him. I was hired to be part of the Office of the Secretary. I'm a special advisor to Secretary Gray, but my first major project is Real ID, and it was the launch of the Real ID program. It was well underway when I joined the cabinet in January of 2020. But it's my task to get it up and going. At that point in time, there was an October 1, 2020 deadline for enforcement. And now that deadline is October 1 of 2021. But a lot has happened despite the pandemic. So I really want to thank you at the outset, Judge Mattingly. You're a great advocate for your county. You really, really, really saw the vision of having a regional office. And fortunately for both of our sides, our interests aligned on that. And the good folks of Owen County, I'm sorry, of Daviess County, the good folks have a great office there, a regional office.
Well, at least you didn't call us Daviess County, which is
I'm so sorry. No, I know it's Daviess County. I work with 120 counties a day, Judge.
I understand. Well, let me tell you about Secretary Gray. He and I had an opportunity, and I know it sounds like I'm beating this drum, but I'm really a fan of Secretary Gray's. I think he was absolutely the perfect person for the governor to select to head up KYTC. As a matter of fact, on both sides of the aisle, I hear no bad things about Secretary Gray. And I think why he served as mayor of Lexington for a couple terms, so he understands local politics, he understands local government, and even more so, he has a family construction business, so he's been in the real world. He's had to deal when decisions he made didn't affect taxpayer dollars; they affected dollars out of his own pocket. And when I got elected, I always said that I'm going to treat taxpayer dollars just like dollars that are coming out of my own pocket. And I think Jim does the same thing. So Real ID, what are you telling me that I have had in my pocket a non-Real ID all these years?
Well, Judge, the Real ID Act came about in 2005, and it was the product of a recommendation that came out of the 9/11 Commission. And one of the recommendations involved increasing security for domestic travel on airplanes and entering federal buildings and military bases. And the Real ID Act was put into place. It is a federal act, a federal mandate. And by that, I mean that all states were due to comply with it, because obviously, it's going to take all states and territories to implement and to have us able to move from airport to airport, et cetera. So the purpose really is to make us safer and make the country more secure and stronger. And that's how it came about. And it does involve a different driver's license on their face. The standard license in Kentucky and the Real ID license, the big difference is there's a star near the upper right-hand corner of the Real ID license. And I think the standard license now says not for Real ID purposes, but it is a choice of every Kentuckian whether to apply for a Real ID identification card or a Real ID driver's license. That is their option. They may have another form of Real ID.
Now, another form of Real ID, I know that it's necessary to have a Real ID when you enter a military installation, when you fly on a domestic flight, and to enter federal buildings. Does that mean that I would have to have a Real ID to enter the post office or the Social Security office?
No. The easiest way I think to think of this is if you enter federal buildings that require an ID currently.
Okay.
So a Social Security office, a VA hospital, post office should not require a Real ID, but
Sure.
a visit to the White House may. Certainly.
Okay.
So those are the types of activities, and also entering on a power plant. Those are the types of activities that will require a form of Real ID. And one thing I'm really urging Kentuckians to do before they rush off, way before their current license expires, or before they rush off and frantically try to get a Real ID or to upgrade their license, is to think if they already have a form of Real ID. Those forms are listed on the TSA website for flying, and also I think you can check with the military bases, but they include a passport, a current valid passport, a passport card, a Department of Defense issued military ID, global entry card. So those kinds of things may save you a trip to immediately get a Real ID or upgrade. And if you have one of those, you may look at the expiration date on your current driver's license or identification card and say, oh, I have a year. I'll just use my passport until it's time and I'll upgrade at the next opportunity. Now, if you are going to travel, currently, the enforcement deadline is October 1. And what that means is anyone who's going to get on a domestic US flight, board a plane, go through TSA, go on a military base, October 1 or later will need a form of Real ID. And Kentucky's driver license and Kentucky's Real ID driver's license and ID card is just one form of that. So, so far, that is the deadline for enforcement. If there is any kind of an extension again to that deadline, we certainly will make that known to Kentuckians. It'll be on our website.
Okay.
But we're
Sarah,
moving full speed ahead.
Yes. Sarah, my wife and my son and I, we travel on domestic flights quite often. I go to Washington, D.C., and I'm in the White House on occasion. So we decided to go ahead and get our Real ID. The only complaint is that the cameras they use to take pictures out there make me look ugly.
Well. Judge, you're probably not alone. None of us likes to look at our picture, and driver's license pictures over the years seem to never match up to what we hope they will.
Our expectations are much higher. That's correct. You know, just a statement, and the reason we went ahead and got ours, and we have passports. We have a hard enough time keeping up with our driver's license, much less having to keep up with a passport and a driver's license. It just made sense to us to go ahead and get. Now, you still have to have that passport when you go out of country.
Yes,
so that
sir.
does not preclude the need to have a passport if you do some foreign travel. But
Yes,
the regional office that we have located here in Daviess County, you know, somebody said, "Oh my gosh, why a regional office?" And why are we doing regional offices as opposed to, you know, we all have circuit court clerks in every county, and the circuit court clerk right now is in charge of regular driver's license. My understanding is that the circuit court clerks chose not to be part of the real ID system. And that's kind of why it was taken out of the administrative offices, the court of the justice system, and moved over to the Kentucky Transportation. To me, makes perfect sense. Should be there to begin with.
Yes, Judge. And you have to remember that we have to all remember that the circuit court clerks all these years have handled driver's licensing and ID credentialing in addition to all their court duties. And when Real ID came down, it did present a different level of review for those who are being issued real IDs. There's additional documentation, there's additional verification, and that was just not something that quite frankly, I think the clerks wanted to take on, or anybody would want to put on them in addition. So it was very quickly apparent, long before I got to the cabinet, that that would be something handled through the driver's licensing division in Kentucky Transportation Cabinet. And from that, we have moved towards regional offices because there was not going to be a need for a real ID office in every county. And since that time, House Bill 453 was passed in 2020 in the regular session. And that now consolidates all driver's licensing and credentialing services in one body, one administrator. That is the Transportation Cabinet. And it does present the requirement that we transition circuit clerks off of driver's licensing duties of any type no later than June 30th of 2022. So that is afoot. At the same time, we're launching even more regional offices. And I think what the Kentuckians are going to have is a network of regional offices that will have a much more streamlined approach to driver's licensing and to real ID issuance, and will have some great new technology features, new security features. We're already in development and about to launch online renewals of standard driver's licenses and of real IDs that have already been issued. So, Judge, you may well not, if your address and name doesn't change, you will probably not have to go back to renew your real ID the next time you're due to go to do that. While we'd love to see you in the office, that's going to be very convenient for Kentuckians, especially ones who don't have a regional office in their county. Now, the good folks of Daviess County have a regional office, and what it means for them is they probably don't have to do much more than make an appointment or show up as a walk-in and have the right documentation for whichever service they wish for us to provide them. Okay. But you will be drawing, Daviess County will be drawing from other counties, because contiguous counties to Daviess County will be probably coming to your county. I do want to stress that if a Daviess Countyan is going to a ball game at U of L or a Hilltopper game at Western Kentucky, they can make an appointment in one of our Louisville or our Bowling Green offices. That's another beauty of regional offices, is we no longer have the county of residency model. Right. And you can work it into your family shopping trips or whatever.
Right. Good point, because I know on occasion, Judy and I have been out of the county and noted, oh my gosh, I failed to renew my driver's license. Hope I don't get picked up before we get home. So a question just came in, and I think it's a good question. I know when I'm a veteran and organ donor. So does Real ID have the capability to handle those requests?
Yes, sir. Licenses? Yes, sir.
Okay, so no different. No different.
You'll be asked the question. You should have been asked the question by the the question and answer pad when you were in there. There is a veterans designation. Yes, sir.
Okay. And if you need it, I think they ask that you bring your DD 214 just to verify that you are a veteran. Well, let me say about our local, and you've heard me sing their praises before. They do an excellent job out there. Judy and I, when we went in, probably we had an appointment. We showed up a little early. They had a spot. Went through to make sure that we had our documents. I had all of mine. It was probably a 10-minute process total, probably less than that. Unfortunately, Judy had a different name on her Social Security card than her driver's license. And I asked the folks, I said, well, we can get another form, a 1099. We can get that other form. We just didn't even think about it. And I said, do we have to make another appointment? He says, oh, no, come on back and we'll process it.
Yes.
Very, very customer friendly. They're there to make that experience as customer friendly as they can make, and they do a heck of a job.
And Judge, I'm really happy to hear that, and I want to thank you. I can't get enough thank yous in, but again, you've helped set us up for success. You know, we're in a great location. We're in a great partnership with Daviess County. But I do want to say that yet again, you've pointed out another advantage of having centralized driver's licensing services. We have a lot of temporary help right now. We're staffing up the offices. But I want to say that the training will be the same for the employees across every regional office. And there is an emphasis on customer service because that's all we do. And we also have that level of expertise. Now, are there some mistakes made? Of course, you know, we've got new people, we have people in training, but I think I've always said, Judge, that when you make a mistake, the real ability to determine how big a deal that mistake is how you recover from it and how you own up to it and move forward. And I think our people try to find, you know, creative ways to help out of the mistakes. But I will say, with your wife's experience, I would like to pitch our iDocument guide, because we have online at drive.ky.gov. If you click on whether it's a real ID or driver's licensing, there's something called an iDocument guide, and it's a very short little quiz that a person should take before they go to the office, especially if they're getting a real ID because of the increased documentation. And it will ask you different questions like, do you have a passport? Well, if you have a passport, you're not going to need the birth certificate. Is your passport valid? It'll ask you about name changes at the end of the document quiz, and it'll tell you to make sure that your names match up on all documents. So we really push the iDocument guide to try to avoid return trips. But when people have to make a return trip, if it's within our scheduling capabilities, we try very hard to get them right back in when they have the document. So thank you for mentioning that.
You touched on our next question from folks who are watching this. What documents do I need for the real ID? And I think your answer would be that you need to go to that iDocument schedule on, and what's that address again, the website again?
You can go to drive.ky.gov and click on Real ID, drive.ky.gov. And I would let you know that if you're getting a real ID, you need documents that fall into 3 categories. The first category is your proof of identity, and that can be a valid US passport, a certified birth certificate, a passport card, a permanent resident card, and various other items. They're mentioned on the iDocument guide. And then the second category you need proof of is Social Security. And we would like an original Social Security card. If you are not sure whether your card is original, we also accept a W-2 wage and tax statement, a 1099, even a paycheck stub, so long as your name and the social is printed on it and you didn't print the number. And the third category you need is your proof of residency. You need 2 proofs of residency, and those can be bills, medical bills, cable bills, utility bills, and they could have been emailed to you or mailed to you. We don't need the envelope, but we need your name and your address on them.
Okay.
And you just bring copies of those. And I would let you know that all documents are returned to the person at the end of the transaction. We scan them in. They're all returned. And one thing I'd like people to know about Real ID, as well as the new driver's licenses, which are issued from our office, if you go there for a driver's license renewal, I would like everyone to know that you are given a temporary document. And it's a piece of 8.5 by 11 paper that looks like the Real ID. It has your picture on it, and it's good for 30 days. And you are told right on that document that your card, the actual card, will come in the mail to you. And I think it says 10 to 15 days. And Judge, you got yours in the mail, right?
7 days. I'm very
happy to hear that.
And my wife's came in the same way, and my son's came in. And of course, I mean, you want to under promise and over perform. And
yes, sir.
That's what they did. So you bring up a good point. My wife and I, when we married, her name now is Mrs. Al Mattingly.
Mm-hmm.
So any proof of residency, most all those things come to Mrs. Al Mattingly. Can she still use that proof of residence?
Well, she probably did she present a passport for her?
Yes.
And that has the same name, correct?
Yes.
And the social had the same name, or the 1099.
Yeah, but it was the proof of residency. By that, I mean at where we live, all the bills come in my name or in our names together.
Well, it can be as long as both of your names are on the proof of life, if are on it. You can hand it for your proof, and she can hand it for hers.
That was what I was trying to point out.
Yes, sir. We can't accept something that doesn't have her name anywhere.
Right. Okay. So how does someone make the appointment? Or, do you just walk in, or?
Nope. You go to the same website, drive.ky.gov, and you click on, there's an orange yellow banner across the top of the page, and it says make appointment. You click there, then you look for the Owensboro office, and you click on it, and it shows you all the available appointments. I think 15-minute time periods. And I looked yesterday, Judge, and there were appointments open beginning early next week. And they ran all the way into, I want to say, the first or second week of June. We also, now, if you make an appointment, then you have a time certain and you can show up then. We certainly take walk-ins. And the last time I checked with our office manager, it was a very short wait for a walk-in. At some of the larger regional offices in the metro areas, the walk-in wait is longer, or we have to cut them off at a certain time of day. That's not happening in Daviess County.
I think when I was talking to the manager out on Kentucky Highway 81 at our operations center, which is answering the question, where is the regional office in Daviess County? If you go out Highway 5681, go through the roundabout heading toward Calhoun, about 3/4 of a mile on the right is the Daviess County Operations Center, clearly marked for the Real ID offices. But they said, certainly don't come in that, don't walk in that 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. If you're going to do it early in the morning or later in the afternoon.
Yeah, the suggestion there is that obviously we have to let half our staff go to lunch for 1 hour and the other half go for an hour. So we're on half staff for a 2-hour period. And I think it runs from about 11 to 1 your time, sir. And so it's best if you can avoid those hours, because we even cut down our appointments that we take during those hours. We just don't have that as many people working.
Well, folks, let me tell you, this is something that you really need to think about. You need to explore. At some point, I suspect that Real IDs will replace all types of licenses. I did. Again, I would tell you that Judy and I, because of our travel, we decided to go ahead and renew our license prior to our old licenses expiring. There was a $15 fee to get a license outside of that time frame. The licenses were made good to the renewal date, and at that time we will renew it, and we will pay. And Sarah, I think you can get either a 4-year license or an 8-year license.
Yes, sir.
Okay, and I don't remember the cost. Do you have that cost
Yes,
available?
sir. It'll be $24 or $48.
Okay, and so it's very inexpensive. And personally, when I get the opportunity to renew something for a long time out, I do it because I just don't have to worry about it anymore. Yeah, I'm being reminded that you have another meeting at 11 o'clock. And Jordan, thank you for that because I was about ready to shut her down. Sarah, thank you for visiting. Say hi to Secretary Gray. Again, Mr. Secretary, I call him sometimes. Sometimes I call him Jim, and sometimes I call him the drug czar because he wears a lot of hats, helping the governor out. Does a great job, and you do a great job representing KYTC. The folks that we have at the regional office do an extremely good job.
I'm very proud of them, and it's been challenging with the pandemic, and thank you for recognizing their efforts.
Sarah, we'll have you on again sometimes.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a nice rest of the day.
You too, sir. Thanks.